I'm Terry Newman, senior editor and columnist with National Post, and I have with me today columnist Michael Higgins, and we're here to discuss the election campaign so far. Thanks for joining us today, Michael.
Thanks, Terry. Good to be here.
Great. So this election campaign is a very strange one. A lot of the normal issues that usually come up, like bread and butter issues, have been sort of clouded by Trump and other things like that. Do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, it's funny. Most elections are fairly boring because they are bread and butter issues. Their affordability, their taxes, their housing. And so both campaigns in a normal election are sort of campaigning on these issues, and they're trying to find something that will distinguish them. But here, the distinguishing aspect theme has been very clear. Carney's campaign is all on Trump, right? And making the case that Trump is going to take our land and steal our water. And, he's coming for our country, quote unquote, he's coming for our country. And so there's an element of fear in Carney's campaign. And I think it's resonating. I think a lot of people are thinking, oh dear, Trump is going to be coming after us. And so Carney is playing into that fear. And it is working. They are fearful that Trump is going to do something, and therefore Carney will somehow be this bulwark against him. And I think on the other aspect, Pierre Poilievre has taken the opposite tack. It is affordability, it's housing, it's taxes, it's making life more affordable for Canadians. It is the bread and butter issues, and literally we are talking bread and butter here. And so you have got this diversity in the campaign. You have got clear themes, and I think people are voting for that. I mean, it doesn't matter that what really matters to Canadians in the long run will be taxes and housing and immigration and capital investment. And if you look at both of the platforms for Carney and Poilievre, those are the things that stand out, and it's not Trump at all. But Trump makes a good bogeyman for Carney, and it's been a political gimmick and a trick, and it's worked.
Right, absolutely. They're definitely capitalizing on the rally around the flag effect, mm-hmm. and that really hasn't stopped. And that's interesting, even though on Liberation Day there really was nothing really new, and there is evidence, at least, that some negotiation might actually be a good stance instead of the fight elbows up language. We saw that the UK preemptively, before Trump's Liberation Day, went and tried to negotiate a deal, and they were successful in that. So it's while it seems to be working for the campaign, it's not completely clear that it's going to work for Canadians. Mm-hmm. But there's been some other interesting controversies that have come up as well. One in particular is Buttongate. Do you want to tell our audience about that?
Sometimes campaigns just shoot themselves in the foot, and this was one such case. There was a Conservative conference, used to be called the Manning Conference, in Ottawa, and a CBC reporter had noticed that there was buttons going around which talked about things like "Stop the Steal," which is a very Trumpian thing to say, and therefore it appeared to be that these Conservatives were doing these buttons sounding very much like Trump. But in fact, as the CBC reporter found out, it was in fact Liberal operatives who had manufactured fake buttons and was then putting them out at the conference, which was a terrible thing to do. It's very, very much like we're in an atmosphere right now where we're talking a lot about disinformation, whether that's foreign disinformation. But to have a political party indulge in actual disinformation is quite scandalous. And it should never have happened. And these weren't low-level volunteers. These were people in Carney's war room, so they must have been high-level operatives. And one must think that it may have come from a high level. Now, Carney says, nothing to do with me, and very much we won't be doing this again. Well, I should hope you won't be doing it again. But if not from Carney, then from some senior Liberals who thought this was a good idea, that Buttongate would actually work for them. But as I say, in the current climate, it's a terrible, scandalous thing to have done.
It's almost as if, the message that Poilievre was Trump-like in his slogans, it wasn't resonating enough, or it wasn't working, and that this group took it upon themselves to go ahead and try to make it real. And you're right, especially with misinformation. This would actually be disinformation, I think. Coming up in this campaign is a very important thing. And then you add that to the problem of foreign interference. And as we saw more recently, the issue with Cheng and Carney's refusal to get rid of Cheng. And now the news that the Chinese government is forwarding more messages to repress Tai, Cheng's opponent, so that former opponent. So this is really important stuff that Canadians really should be paying attention to.
Yeah, and you raise a couple of points there, which leads. Buttongate wasn't an isolated incident in as much as it's an ethical problem for Carney, and instead of firing the people, which is what he should have done in Buttongate, he merely reassigned them. Well, if their last job was spreading disinformation, then any reassignment has got to be good. I mean, what are they doing now? Mugging old ladies or something? I don't know, but he should have fired them. And I think, as I say, this goes into the bigger issue of Carney, ethical and morally. He has made some very questionable decisions. There's that one, Buttongate. You mentioned Paul Chiang. When Chiang said that his opponent should be kidnapped and taken to the Chinese embassy for a bounty, that was a firing offence. That was an immediate firing offence. To say something like that, again, in the current climate, Carney should have just fired him, but he didn't. What he said was that he's actually a man of integrity and he has my backing. Now, I'm sure other senior Liberals, realising that the flack that was coming out of that, got hold of Chiang, and later on, a couple of days later, he stepped down. But again, it shows that Carney's moral compass is a little off here, that he stuck with a candidate for entirely political reasons rather than doing the upright thing. And we've seen this before from the outset. When Carney was asked about Brookfield Asset Management, which was very early in the campaign, that's when he used to be the head of the board, and they moved their headquarters from Toronto to New York, and Carney was asked about that, and he said, well, the decision was made in January. It had nothing to do with me. I'd already stepped down. But as we later learned, the decision was actually made in October, when he was chairman of that board that made the decision. So it was very much a decision that he was part of and which he was made. But again, for political reasons, he decided to tell a falsehood, which is what it was. And, we've had a previous incumbent here who very much got into lots of trouble for ethical reasons, whether it was, going off to the Aga Khan for holiday, or more seriously, trying to force his Attorney General and Minister of Justice to take a decision very much in favour of a company which would have benefited Trudeau's riding, which was unconscionable for the Prime Minister, and he was pulled up for it. And so this isn't some, Carney has to take moral standing, otherwise it's a slippery slope. He's already made 3 slips, there's at least 3 slips where he has made the wrong ethical and moral choice. And so we have to wonder what he'll make as a Prime Minister if he's so readily choosing the political decision over the right decision.
Absolutely. Another interesting thing that's come up in terms of ethically, in a moment we're going to go into the notwithstanding conversation, but I want to bring up one other thing from the debate that happened, the leaders' debate that happened last week. When Mark Carney in the English debate brought up Pierre Poilievre's security clearance again, this is something, that the reasons for have been explained even by Thomas Mulcair. It's very questionable that a leader, somebody who wants to be Prime Minister of the country, would still keep kind of banging on this point. I think that might also fall into, a little bit of the information that's being given is not really being made clear to Canadians. And then Poilievre is seemed to be ready for that attack.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. The security clearance issue, I think it's been made very, very clear why Pierre Poilievre won't take it. And yet they see that there's some political gain to be made, and so they're still banging on about it.
Yeah. And of course, during both leaders' debates last week in Montreal, the use of the Notwithstanding clause was brought up. And it was suggested during the French debate by Mark Carney that it might be a slippery slope.
Absolutely. We defend the rights of women all the time. But what I'm concerned about is the use of the Notwithstanding clause. Not in a preventative way, but after Supreme Court judgments have been made. What does that do? It takes away Canadians' rights and freedoms. And it creates, and Mr. Poilievre has proposed this I know the situation, but this is a very dangerous development, because if we start with that, abortion could be,
give the right to reply.
The right to abortion could eventually be next.
I've been in this country 25 years now, and abortion is always brought up by the Liberals every single time. I mean, it is a constant theme that they bring up without any justification. But this again goes further than just abortion, though, right? Because Carney was questioned about this, and he was said, you have made this accusation. He was questioned and said, you've made this accusation, but Pierre Poilievre has specifically said, I will give you a guarantee that I will not, change the abortion rules. And Carney said, it's not an accusation, it's a fact. Mm-hmm. Well, again, that's wrong. I mean, that's another falsehood. He has got nothing to back that up. It's not a fact. Poilievre has said the exact opposite. And so to say that your opponent is going to do this as a fact when there is no evidence whatsoever is, again, it's not just desperate. It's a specific decision that has been taken to denigrate your opponent on an issue which is important to so many people, and to fearmonger and to scare people into voting Liberal. And it will work for some people. I've already seen people online saying, absolutely, this is what the Conservatives will do. And it's not. It's wrong. It's fear-mongering. This is not how to lead a country. You lead a country by example. You lead a country, at least morally and politically in the right frame of mind. You don't scare the people into voting for you, which is what Carney's doing. And I find it very reprehensible. I really do. I just think it's a shame that he's resorting to these kind of seedy, sleazy tactics.
Yeah, of course, and it's ironic as well, because during the debate, during the English debate, he's suggesting that the Notwithstanding clause shouldn't be used for these types of things, and you have to love how Blanchet jumped in and kind of course, Quebec using the Notwithstanding clause a lot, saying, well, this is what it's there to be used for. The other problem in terms of not completely informing Canadians, that's just blatant misinformation that you explained for fear purposes, despite the fact that Carney is promising a positive, uniting campaign, is that whenever these Supreme Court rulings are turned over if they were to turn over by a Notwithstanding clause, I believe the legislation just ends up back in the House for people to do something with, just like the consecutive sentences. It's not automatic. Like, the House would still have to go through this and pass it again, as the consecutive sentences were passed by Stephen Harper before the Supreme Court struck them down. And one of the arguments against the consecutive sentences was, we don't need them. There are no multiple murderers going free. But it took me about 2 seconds to think of the McDonald's murderers, who 2 of them are out. The third would probably be out right now, because he did not have consecutive sentences, but he had started fights in the prison and had not been on good behavior. So it does happen. The main point being more so that the families probably shouldn't have to go through these hearings for multiple murders. Yeah. This is something that these kind of nuances are not really being teased out this campaign, and it seems that the promise of positive, campaigning and unification is a little bit of a facade there.
Yeah, and on the notwithstanding clause as well, another argument, of course, is that politicians should be making these kind of decisions. They shouldn't have to use the notwithstanding clause to override the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court shouldn't be getting involved in political decisions. If the majority of people are happy with what the politicians are doing and it's a political decision, the Supreme Court should be staying out of it anyway.
Absolutely. I think most Canadians would agree that they're horrendous murders, multiple murders, that the family should not have to go up, and that MPs who are elected by them to represent their views should be making these decisions instead of Supreme Court judges who have often very idealistic views of what works, despite that actually being their profession. So yes, I agree. Well, thank you, Michael. I mean, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen on Monday. Do you have any thoughts, given that the polls have changed?
You know, I attended the early polls, and I was speaking to one of the volunteers there, and they said they were overwhelmed by the response, that there were wait-ups, queues of an hour, and you know, they were just surprised at the number of people. So I think people realise, A, that it is a very important election, and so they're voting. So I think we could actually see a record turnout. What's the result going to be? I'm not even going to go there. You know, I think Canadians will be surprised if Mark Carney is elected when Trump fades into the distance and they have to confront what's happening with the economy and how things are going. The Liberals put out their platform a couple of days ago, and if you looked at it, you will see that he makes lots of criticisms of the past government, of the Trudeau government, for spending too much. It actually says twice the federal government spent too much. It talks about underinvesting and under-resourcing, about cutting back on the bureaucracy. But then, of course, as it criticises Trudeau for spending too much, the platform is to spend another 130 billion extra and to go into bigger deficits. So if Carney's elected, we're just going to have the same policies that we had under Trudeau, and I think affordability will still be an issue, and we're really not, pipelines doesn't get mentioned once in the Liberal platform. We're still not going to get energy to any of the markets. We're going to be dependent on America. Trump will be able to bully us all he wants. So, yeah, I think Canadians may be in for a surprise if Carney is elected.
Thanks for joining us today, Michael. And hopefully we'll chat again post-election, or maybe one more time before the election. We'll see.
All right, Terry. Good to be. Bye.